Welcome back. Tom Waits was in Shrek 2.
Might have been Shrek 3 now that I'm thinking about it.
Tom Waits was in a Shrek movie.
Yeah, a Tom Waits song was definitely in a Shrek movie.
Tom Waits auditioned for the role of Shrek.
I would have loved a Tom Waits Shrek movie.
But only for Shrek 3.
Are you like falling...
I have no clue. The answer's probably...
I desperately want to live in a world in which this was true. Research... Is this game gonna have a plot? I don't want this game to... I was not told there would be plot.
Space? Wait.
Tom Waits. What are we gonna
No!
Press space for Waits. 1877 space for Waits.
I'm waiting. The gears do rotation during wait.
You can stop. Yeah.
Interesting.
Kiki is defeat. I don't like that. I liked Kiki. Remember when we had 2 of Kiki?
Yeah.
That was good times.
Bolt is push. Okay. So if this, but
Bolt is also melt though. What's the difference between push and move? Oh, you can. Okay. When it's move, it's you.
oh,
Everyone mourned Bolt.
R.I.P.
He was a good dog in that one movie. Because it's my job to tell you what movies Tom Waits was and was not in. I don't think Tom Waits was in that movie. As much as I would have loved his career to go, Bolt, Ballad of Buster Scruggs, whatever he does next, he did not do that.
Kind of a jump between those two. A lot of downtime.
I cared about the joke, but not enough to fill it with stuff.
So how do...
Is this a political question or gameplay question?
I'm trying to see if I can weave the two together in a seamless fashion. So similar to how we could, in theory, change Baba is you in the corner there, but as it stands, the part that we would be able to change is the is, and that would result in bad things. How
Such
do
as
we...
Existential trapdoor?
Yeah, how do we... Because Baba Hot You just doesn't have the same ring to it.
A couple episodes ago, we did an accidental hair flip. So then, in an effort to be a hot rabbit, I just attempted an on-purpose hair flip.
But how do we know which things are or should be able to be changed? Whoa. It just moves back and forth. Anytime I move, it moves. So when I wait, it just zooms.
Excuse me.
That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Oh, I may or may not see how to do this. While I'm setting this up, I did a thing again. While I'm setting this up, would you like to, once again, sort of speak to your assessment on sort of mutability or not?
So we've gone from, just to, fall back on my teacher instincts and do a broad-based recap before answering the question.
Yeah.
We've gone from are rules mutable, to which we've said yeah, to okay, are all rules mutable, to which we've said I don't know, probably, for all intents and purposes, to okay, if most or all rules are immutable, how do we know which ones to spend our energy muting? Is that what is the participle there? Bender.
Yeah, we'll go muting.
I feel like that's just what mimes call vaping. But, and I mean, my gut instinct was to tell you, okay, whatever policies or rules or unspoken precepts are doing the most damage to the most people. But that also assumes that everyone's definition of who people is the same, which would be fantastic if that were true. But there are certainly groups in society, of which I am a couple, of which you are a couple, of which many of our listeners, I assume, also a couple, that aren't, for practical purposes, really considered people, at least not people that are even remotely high on the priority list. So even just using sort of the utilitarian concept of, you push at whichever rules are doing the most damage to the most people, assumes that we all welcome all peoples to our table, which has literally never been the case in this country or probably any other. Certainly no democracy that I can think of. So I don't know, can I just ping pong your question back at you?
Sure.
So if we're not going to use you push at whichever rules are currently doing the most damage to the most people, what's a more precise instrument we can use for that?
So that has a level of sort of currentness and immediacy that to say it like disturbs me is such an over exaggeration, but it I think is part of where you're feeling the difference.
Yeah, and I mean, fear of immediacy is a huge benefit of the delegate position, because the small c conservative instinct to not just change things for the sake of changing them is like a thing. Because sometimes when, say, planned communities are pretty aggressively quickly planned, they can be really bad.
Yeah.
So you definitely don't want something that leads to so much immediacy that there's no possibility for like foresight.
Yeah.
But I think I'm more biased toward immediacy as a person, because with most of my activism coming from disability activism, that's one of the areas in which you can say, if this doesn't happen, this person will literally die, and usually be right. The difference between getting insulin on Tuesday and getting insulin on Thursday can be bad.
But I think where I'm going with this is where I tend to go, and what I wrote my anthropology thesis on, where I have generally come to.
Oh, there's a robot in this. Not to cut you off, but
robot.
I was going to say there are multiple. Yeah, there are multiple robots.
Whee! I love these little robots. Did you know they're like robots?
Yeah, and I think you did that. You've always been a friend to our community, Diego.
I blew up Baba. I blew up my robot. What will I do?
Should we name the robots, or is that just going to make this process harder?
Well, that would make me sad.
And
so it's not just what is happening, but also what has happened. Because I think a piece of it has to do with how power structures have functioned, not just how they are currently functioning.
We can look at, say, governments immediately post-Reconstruction and the efforts to dismantle them, and sort of get clues as to what tends to happen when a lot of these issues are almost rectified.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want, I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't want so much of a recency bias, so much of what is immediately happening right now, that we lose our ability to sort of anticipate and plan for the intentional and unintentional bad ways in which good policy can fail.
Yeah. Because I think there's. Oh.
That's me. Sorry.
You're good. Jamming ringtone.
Hello? Good. How about yourself? I just got a phone call asking if I want to be a part of a police support charity drive. And then I hung up. Although it was a robocall about a police officer. So I technically just got a call from RoboCop. Which, like, big moment for me. Sorry, yeah.
So there's both the aspect of we can learn from history because a lot of things have happened for a long time and things that we know about, and as such we can be not just sort of cognizant of that, but also on top of that, like what you're saying with Reconstruction, the things that have happened in the past that may, I'll say, technically not be continuing to happen. Look at something like colonization. Mm-hmm. There aren't many places in the world currently where sort of direct political occupation of one place over another is happening. But neocolonialism, sort of that economic control, is definitely still a thing.
Yeah.
And it is sort of that historical information, that way that power structures have worked, that tell you something like, we kind of just say like that the that Scandinavian countries. Baba is you and open. Interesting. This is an interesting set of things.
What are we opening, though?
Water.
Because water is shut.
Yeah. I lost track of what I was thinking about because I was boggled by countries. I was boggled by water being shut, and that's such an interesting concept.
Yeah, I stopped on that too. How can water be shut?
But it works effectively the same as other things.
Die.
But we just know shut means something.
I wish I still had classes with Professor Timothy Shutt because I could call him Professor Tim Die.
So we gotta, I don't want to say take for granted, but it is a refrain oft repeated about the ways in which like Scandinavian countries are socialist or have strong welfare systems or whatever.
As if there's something natural about them being Scandinavian and therefore socialist.
Yeah, and on top of that, key and open. And you know, you see the same things with sort of generally like Western European places, where you see like Britain's economy is really good, and you can say, that is in no small part because of the injustices of the past, not more so, but as something to also think about, on top of the key's in a bad spot. I goofed that all up.
Wait, is anything? It seems problematic that nothing is win.
everything is sort of on top of each other. I needed to make something win. But you don't get the full picture unless you look at the injustices of the past as well as the injustices of now. And I think that is a way that informs, in anthropology and how I usually talk about it, that informs who ought to have more of a voice in terms of this, that, or the other. And in politics, maybe then it serves as a way to talk about what should be considered mutable, what should be considered immutable, what goals should be considered the end goals, what should be considered the win in this situation, and what should be considered the the baba or the key or
one thing that you didn't say but sort of implied or left open that I want to see where that goes. So you talked about how, injustices of the past are an ethically relevant category, injustices of now are an ethically relevant category. Are injustices of the future equally relevant, or is that sort of a category that is so broad as to mean nothing and be sort of unusable? Where my mind immediately went, so I made a solemn vow to Diego, not because he asked me to, but because I like tying one hand behind my back, that I wasn't going to name specific politicians in this episode, and then I broke that about 10 minutes in the first episode when things made sense and etc. So I'm going to break it again. Dianne Feinstein was outside of her office, and we can complain this, that, or the other about this video being staged. And she's a California Democrat. Really highly decorated California Democrat. And a bunch of children were outside of her office saying, in direct reference to the New York Times report that came out a couple months ago that essentially had said we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 years, give or take 20, to curtail the most catastrophic effects of climate change. That sort of babies born this year, by the time they graduated high school, entered college, would be dealing with things like food shortages, et cetera, et cetera. And one of her responses was, "You guys didn't vote for me. I don't have to listen to you right now." Which, once these kids are old enough to be able to vote for Dianne Feinstein, assuming they even want to, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Once these kids are 18, unless we're talking about drastically lowering the voting age, which I remind you we've done once before, and we did it purely in response to people being killed in Vietnam. If you're old enough to be shot, you're old enough to vote. Maybe if you're old enough to experience climate change related food shortages, you're old enough to vote. You're able to sort of sidestep these two categories that we've been talking about of, I blanked on the two categories. You're able to sidestep these two categories we've been talking about of the delegates?
Yep, delegates and trustees.
Delegates and trustees, damn it. Okay. You're able to sidestep these two categories we've been talking about, delegates and trustees, when you're talking to people who you literally know are not your constituents, but who will be affected by your decisions. The reason why, in the beginnings of the Trump administration, we were all like, please do not call House reps, senators from other areas. Because my mom worked in Republican politics in Michigan for a while, and they would literally have whiteboards in their offices where it was 18 tally marks for this thing, 17 tally marks against this thing, and other states were just seen as, oh, that's the Democrats hyping this up so much that people from Pennsylvania are calling to yell at people from Michigan. So they can essentially say, these aren't our constituents, we shouldn't listen to them. But they can essentially do that with children right now, regardless of them being in their states. So one of the problems with only voting as a delegate is that you're only responsive to the needs of the voting age population in your state who is not incarcerated. Which is also, in a lot of cases, not disabled or not a member of a sort of First Nations people that has weird tribal ID legal red tape in terms of whether that's being used as voting ID. Once you can bring people out of the constituency because they're either below the voting age or incarcerated or etc., then unless you're a trustee, unless you're voting based on your own ethics and not the will of your voters, you can basically decide what you're being asked to do by deciding who your voters are.
Yeah.
Which is why people in prison should be able to vote. I don't know what I'm missing that. People in prison should be able to vote.
Yeah. Should we call this a wrapping up spot?
Yeah. Unless, do you want another just 10 seconds of serene flag dancing to cut down on the heaviness?
I thought I knew how to figure this out, but
We
I
should
don't.
put like Mr. Blue Sky in the background here. This flag is our baby Groot.
I'll see if I can find a MIDI of that and slap it in here.
Yeah, we'll see you next time on Let's Play. Let us know if you want us to do more sort of aggressively thinky episodes about puzzle games or more #casual ones that are sort of beat 'em up.
Goodbye.
Yeah, bye.